period. Well, great. The video.
The making of this DVD has been pleasurable and enlightening to many people. The proceeds of its sale will go to cancer care. At present we're looking at two New Holland 1520s. They would be in the region of 1980s, and they are an 8 and a 10 foot cut. The 8 and 10 foot cut would be favoured in rural Ireland. Fields were small and gaps were 10 and 12 foot gates, so it was easy to get in and out with a machine. In larger corn producing areas they would be using 14 and 16 foot cuts. These machines of course can cut, thrash and leave straw in a row that would be later baled. Now these machines would cut in the region of 10 to 12 acres a day depending on quality of the crop and distance travelled between one farmer and another. The grain would be contained on a tank on the machine, and when the tank is full it would be expelled. The sickle was invented in China. It was used mainly for cutting reeds and rice because those crops grew in wet ground and the sickle was ideal for it. It was also used in Ireland for cutting reeds and so on for thatching. Small holdings with little corn, because Ireland was a poor country and famine-like and so on, it survived as a harvesting tool. The straw would be used for thatching. The sheaves would be bound with a piece of the oats itself, carefully knotted, put to one side, and later it would be stooped. The scythe originated with the Romans. It would be the longest surviving harvester of all time. A good scythe person would cut an acre a day. And the swiping motion, as you can see, was a big step up on the sickle. Also used until the maybe 1950s or 60s in Ireland, again because people were small holdings and people were generally poor. It was a cheap and easy method of harvest. This was known as taking the oats, which would putting it together into bundles. The bundles would be bound and later stooped. There we can see some of the stooks. Nicely stacked together, keep the weather out. horse mowing machine, invented in 1812 in Pennsylvania. The initial use of the horse mowing machine was for cutting hay, but corn was also, as you can see, easily cut with it. It was a major step up from the scythe. There was many versions of reapers attached to the horse mowing machine. Some of them would hold on to the corn until the person was ready to release it. Made it a lot easier on the people coming along later, making the sheaves. Here we see the person holding on to the corn with the rake, and when there's an appropriate mount ready, he'll pull it to one side and leave it there for the people to follow. Here again we can see the bunching of the oats and the tying of the oats, the binding of the oats. Now, around the 1880s, engineers were tying with the idea of having the cutter and the binder enrolled into one. A guy called Charles Whittington invented the idea of cutting it. John Appleby was tying with the idea of knotters at the time, but until 1888 or so, William Deering put the two together and came up with what was known as the Deering binder. This is a Hornsby binder, manufactured after World War I. It's a 4-foot cut. The reason for manufacturing it 4-foot cut is that after the war, horses were scarce and weak. With a 4-foot cut, it could be pulled by 3 horses rather than 4. So the same cutting effort as the horse mowing machine. Canvases conveyed the corn to knotters. The knotters tied a twine on it. Then it was tossed out, as you can see right there, and saved a lot of manpower. Now in 1923, McCormick bought the company known as Deering's, the original binder makers, and the binder from there on was known as a McCormick Deering. The one we're looking at the moment would have been built in the 30s going towards the 40s. They were all ground drive with a large wheel driving a chain which drove all the other mechanisms. Tractor is a 1946 McCormick built in France. All the binders were originally horse-drawn. Later, as you can see here, converted to be towed with a tractor instead of the horses. McCormick International Utility Tractor built in France, late 40s. Petrol. Petrol was cheap back then. And here we can see an example of stooking the oats. A number of sheaves would be stacked together. The idea would be to keep the grain off the ground, keep it dry. If bad weather was expected, the stooks would be headed, whereby 4 sheaves or so would be turned the opposite way, bound together with bits of itself, and it would keep the rain off the grain.
Well, great. Here's a video.